Hello, good morning, everyone. It's Cheryl Leong from the Growth Hub, and welcome to our final Business of Property Mentoring Community live event. Because in July, we are actually making this group a private group, and it's going to be private for our clients to do trainings, coachings, and for them to be able to talk openly and ask questions as well. So we've tested this platform out for a few months, and we've just found that it is fantastic definitely for our for people to learn more, but definitely it's a huge amount of value for our clients to be able to talk openly about their businesses as well. And hence, this is not going to be our last, but it is our going to be the last in terms of the open group format. So of course, to wind it all up, and my favorite guest, not that my other guests are not favorites, but very, very good friend Tony, and also our mentor Tony Meredith, is going to be talking to us about sales, and sales not being a dirty word, because it is one thing that comes up all the time. Is I see people spend a lot of money on great marketing, and if they've got great leads coming through, but then they sort of fall on the conversion side of things. So as we know with business, it's sort of every step of the way there's something you need to tweak and something you need to sort of improve and refine on. Tony is a sales coach and has run large sales teams before. So without further ado, I would love to bring Tony Meredith on board to the Business of Property dance floor.
On the dance floor. Cheryl, hello. How are you?
Very good, Tony. I have seen you dance. I
And it's pretty ordinary.
I didn't quite mean it that way, but I've just seen you dance, and we'll hold it on.
Correct.
How are you, Tony?
I'm doing really well. I didn't realize this was your last public session, so I feel
Yes,
really privileged, Cheryl. So the old saying, saving the best till last. So I feel
absolutely.
really privileged, and I need to finish off this public session with a big bang for all of
With
your
an
audience.
absolute bad. I suspect that you were probably one of our first as well.
Probably
So
was.
probably,
Probably
probably.
was.
Well, you were in the original Business of Property, and so we thought, commemorate the whole thing.
Oh,
We
to
want
trip
to be
down
able
memory lane.
exactly, Tony. But we are talking about sales,
Mm,
and sales not being a dirty word.
mm,
Hello, whoever's joining us today. Thank you. Make sure you ask questions around sales and share your challenges with any of you, what's happening with your sales and so on. I have some juicy questions I do want to ask Tony.
mm,
Um, but the thing that we want to go deep into, Tony, a little bit about your sales background to begin with, and,
mm,
and,
mm.
and what you do with businesses now.
Yep, sure. So I've been involved in sales since 2000. So prior to that, I did a double degree in marketing and human resources. Like any graduate, wanted to get a job, so I ended up being a HR manager or HR assistant, then a HR manager, and then realised after 2.5 years that wasn't for me, and I thought I'd give the marketing side of things a go. So started off as a sales trainee for the Mars Corporation, then worked my way up to being a sales rep and then estate manager, and have gone to all sorts of wonderful, different jobs in sales, heading up sales teams, national sales operations manager, so on and so forth. So I've been doing it since 2000, and I absolutely love it. And the reason that I love it is because we're going to get into it today and really start to bust this myth that sales is a dirty word, because in fact it's not. And so I'm looking forward to, deep diving that with you throughout the course of the next, however long we're here.
Fantastic. And the one thing you've just said, you love it. So
Mm,
many people almost despise sales.
yeah,
Almost
yeah.
feel that sales is, when they think of sales, it's like a secondhand car salesperson,
Mm.
um, or the great infomercials that they're like, and then we'll get steak knives with this and
Yeah,
so on.
correct. Buy more, but wait, there's more. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we think that sales is such a dirty word. It's because of all of these preconceived ideas that we've had for, 5, 10, 15, 20, however many years, in exactly the examples that you're saying. Manipulative, slimy, lacking integrity, not trustworthy, going to sell you things that you don't want, don't need. And that's what salespeople carry with them today. We've got to bust that myth, because the
Mm,
reality is that everybody is a salesperson. Like everyone, doesn't matter if you're in business or not. And I appreciate that we're talking to a
absolutely.
business audience here, but if you are having conversations with your partner around which restaurant to go to, around what meal to eat, you are negotiating. If you are, if you have children, tidy up rooms, you are negotiating, right? If you are looking at, which channel to watch on TV, you are negotiating. So we're selling and negotiating all day, every day. We just don't think of that in that way.
Absolutely. And the truth is when I first started business, and I hear this very often, I remember saying it and I hear this come up quite often when I'm speaking to others. They're like, I'm just not a salesperson.
Mhm.
I don't do it salesy. And it's almost a little bit a bit defensive
Mm.
when you say that because it's like there's such a connotation
Mm.
attached to the word salesperson. And
Yep.
so what I mean personally, like I realized, and that was the light bulb moment for me, was that sales is not around that hard selling, that manipulation about giving people what they don't want, like
Mm.
forcing things on people that they don't want.
Yep.
It's really that you are facilitating their journey to make a decision.
You're helping
And
them. You're
yeah,
helping them.
and
People have a need. If we need to go and get food, for example, you need to go and buy some food. Again, I talked about going to a restaurant. You want to go. You got out. You want to go and your need is to entertain yourself. Go out, have a meal. All these things involve a transaction. It involves you buying something, someone selling you something. And like I said before, sales is not a dirty word. And it starts with the mindset. And I know
mhm,
people who have followed me will be shocked that I've introduced the word mindset into this, but it's 100% the mindset because, like you touched on before, Cheryl, I love it. I love it because I know that it can help people. I know that
yeah.
when I speak to people, I know that I have something that can help them. They reach out to me. They've got a situation, they've got a problem, they've got a need, and I know that I can help them. And that's why I get excited about having those conversations.
Died.
Oh, I have a personal assistant here.
My iPad died.
And as children do. Thank you. We move on.
That's okay. We
They
can.
haven't read the sign that says on air.
Yeah, correct. So it's not a dirty word, Cheryl, is the honest answer, but it is a mindset. And so if your mindset is, I can't sell, I struggle with selling, I don't want to be a salesperson, then you've got no chance. You've got absolutely no chance of being successful in sales. Whereas if you lean into this and say, well, I love the opportunity to help people, I love the opportunity to solve people's problems, I love to be able to help people move forward in whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish, well, that's a different meaning. And I've totally changed the meaning. And so from a mindset point of view, it's about changing the meaning. One from I'm fearful of sales. And the reason why I might be fearful of sales is because of being rejected.
Mm,
People saying no to me, people giving me some objections that I can't handle, right? Versus I love it, I embrace it, I'm ready to have those conversations because I genuinely want to be able to help people.
yeah, absolutely. So there's the
Mm.
mindset factor, and what are the main things to be able to, I think that's the first component. How do we break through those blockages and mindset
Well, you
type?
change the meaning of sales. So being one of fearful about sales, being one of associating sales with manipulation, with slimy, with people who lack integrity, are dishonest, etc., to one of I want to help people. Like when you start to view this as a way to help someone, like
Mm,
yes, I have a service. I'm a coach, and my service is to help people. And yes, I sell that service. I don't hide behind that fact, just like your business and everyone's business, right? But the fact is that my service can help people, just like a lawyer, just like someone who runs a virtual assistant agency, etc. We want to be able to help people, and so reframe the whole meaning. And from a meaning point of view, the most common example we talk about is the glass with 50% of water. And some people will look
Mm,
at that as being half full and being pessimistic, and others half full being optimistic, or half empty being pessimistic. And so the point is that we can look at sales and people based on their beliefs, their values, their past, their memories, the decisions they've made. We'll look at it from a very different angle. So start to challenge yourself on what's the meaning that you're associating with sales. Now, if you're in business, you better get used to selling and loving selling pretty quickly. Otherwise, you won't have a business, right? It's that simple. So, we want to be able to help you start to, change your mindset on it.
yeah, absolutely. So there's the mindset side of things, and then there's the what I've found as well is there's a mechanics of actually you can learn how to sell well.
Yeah,
And again,
correct.
I always thought it was a you were a born salesperson. Um, that's not necessarily true. There are
No.
certain structures that you can put in to place that can guide people. And I'd love to hear what you use, Tony.
Sure. So there's structure. So from a sales process. So what's the process that I go through? So every business will be slightly different, but create a sales process. So you might have a little introduction. You might even have some stuff before you actually get to the physical sales conversation. So, for example, yesterday I was speaking to someone who runs a videography business, and they have a series of videos that they have as part of their warming up to the actual sales conversation. So you talked
Mhm.
about earlier in your introduction around, people get to the top of your funnel, but this is now the bit in the middle. How do we now, people have found us, they've found our lead magnet, they've found us through referral. Now it's about, I'm having a conversation. So you can use some things before the conversation to warm people up so that when they have the conversation with you, they feel like they've already got to know you just a little bit.
Yeah.
Then in the actual meeting itself, it's about start to have a process, right? And so for me, the first process is around what introduction, but then it's about what are the objectives? So what are the objectives? Why are we talking here today? What's the
Mm,
whole purpose of this conversation? And it's not about my objectives as the salesperson, it's about the person that I'm talking to. What's their objectives? And so that then leads into two absolutely powerful skills that all salespeople need to have. One is this and this. And so it's about ask great questions and then listen. And listen, you have two ears and one mouth, and listen in that ratio. Listen twice as much as you talk. Even better, if you can listen 4 times as much as you talk, then you're going to have a far better outcome. And the whole purpose of that, and I recognize I'm doing a lot of talking now, but the whole purpose is to ask questions and then
mhm,
really just start to unpack and discover what's going on for that person. What have
yeah.
they tried before? What's their problem?
Mhm,
What are they, who have they gone to for that particular solution? Why are they coming to you now? Why are they coming to you
mm,
at all? Ask all of these types of questions with a way of just starting to formulate in your own mind what's going on for this person. And the whole time knowing full well that I have a number of services that I could be offering, but I'm just going to sit back, listen, adopt a
mhm.
curious mindset, and then when the time is right, then I'm going to talk about what my potential solutions are for that person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to pause there to be able to highlight what you've done there and what you've highlighted in this particular process.
Mm,
It's not around, "Hey, Bob, thanks for coming. This is what we do. We're fantastic with this, and we've been rated this, and this, and this, and this. What do you think you want to sign up?"
mm,
That's very different to what you've just mentioned, which is
mm,
very much around sitting and asking these open-ended questions. Like you said, ask the right questions. Use whys. What? Whys and whats are incredibly powerful because then they're
mm,
open-ended questions that open up conversations.
mm.
Really important that what I realized as well, that you've got to be able to steer the conversation to us the next step, but do it in a really subtle way where you understand where these sort of questions may lead to. But listen, I mean, the listening is a big part because you need, whilst listening, then you can come up with great questions. And if,
Oh, look,
however,
and And
in the
look,
time.
the whole thing is about planning, Cheryl. So you
Mm,
touched on before around planning. So I plan all the types of questions that I want to ask, and even though it may appear that it's seamless when I'm in the thrust of that conversation, but I have planned those conversations. I have refined my process over many many years. And look, in my business, so I will have a 20-minute conversation with everyone in a discovery call, and I would say that probably 15 minutes of that 20 minutes is me listening. And
mm,
then 5 minutes is me actually talking about, well, here's how I can help you. And so the more that I can understand what's going on for the prospect, for the potential client, the potential customer, the better I can then frame a solution that's going to be the right fit for them. Because if you then frame a solution up and someone's umming and ahhing and throwing you heaps of objections your way, then you probably haven't done your job earlier on. So that's an indication that when you present your offer and then all of a sudden you're thrust with all these objections, then you haven't listened clearly to what's going on and you haven't shaped your offer in line with what you've heard.
excellent. There's two things I want to touch on, Tony, that
Please.
you've sort of mentioned. One, I want to talk about scripts or call guides in
Yep.
terms of planning, having some sort of a template. And
Yep.
then number two is the structure of having like a discovery triage call and then having a longer call as well, and the pros and cons of having that. So let's start with the first bit.
Yep.
Um, Tell me about your thoughts around having a script guide, sorry, a call guide or a call script for all these sorts of sales calls.
Oh, it's essential, because if you just rock up to your call and you wing it, then you're going to get out of things what you put into them. And so sales is very much a performance art. And what I mean by that is there's a script you think about from an actor's point of view, and it's not that I'm acting, but I mean from an actor's point of view, you're practicing a script, you're learning your lines, you're learning how to handle certain objections that come your way.
Mm,
And so then when you're in the thrust of that conversation, it hopefully comes across very seamless and very natural. So absolutely give yourself a guide to go by, and particularly because when you're listening intently or actively listening to someone, quite often you can go off in different directions. And if you
mm,
haven't got a guide that's in front of you just to bring you back to where you want to be, then you'll go off in a different direction. You'll be immersed in a conversation. It'll probably be a really great conversation,
yes.
but then you'll go, oh gosh, what else
And
was
it,
I going to ask that person? And whereas there's nothing wrong with having some prompters that are sitting in front of you. And so in this setting, because your business may be a bit like mine, where I will do a Zoom
mm,
call primarily. I do some face-to-face discovery calls, but not too many. So I'll do a Zoom call. And so for me, I will have in front of me, I will have my trusty notepad, my iPad, and I'll have my pen, and I will be writing things down in line with the types of questions that I want to be asking.
okay.
So
And
go
see,
for it.
yeah,
Don't be embarrassed by this stuff. Particularly, again, we're talking about people who are struggling with sales, who don't see
mm,
themselves as salespeople. To think that you can go from that to just a blank page, let's rock up, let's have a discovery call, and I'm just going to wing it. Well, you're not going to get the outcomes that you're looking for. Whereas you get out of things what you put into them. And when you
yeah,
put in place some systems and some processes, and then you have a repeatable process, and there's nothing wrong with evolving that process over time as well. And so you might start off with something and then you get to a point, you go, you know
mm,
what, that feels a little clunky. Nothing wrong with that, right? And so you evolve this over time. But I would absolutely strongly suggest that you have something in front of you as a guide for your conversation.
yeah, absolutely. And what I've realized as well is one, you're gonna, like you said, condense that call. Because
Mm,
I remember when I first started, I'd have fantastic calls. It'd be like
mm,
45
mm,
minutes to an hour, and then I get to that and
mm,
go, they're not really qualified.
mm, mm,
And then you're gonna have another call. I mean, if you get to the next
mm,
call, is have another call that might take another hour,
mm.
and we're looking for efficiencies in what we do. It's not that you
Yep.
don't have these what fantastic calls. It's just
Mm,
make sure that you've got a purpose around that. So discovery triage, it is generally a shorter call,
mm,
with the intention and the purpose. Again, we need to have an intention and a purpose for each thing that we're going into,
mm,
being able to schedule probably another call, whether it's a strategy call or it's a more in-depth call. However,
mm,
for that, There's two things. One, having a structure, making sure that it's nice and condensed,
Mm,
and to the point. But two, systems and processes. We go on a lot about systems and processes. If
mm,
you're not going to necessarily be the only salesperson in your business, and if you want to grow a team,
mm,
well, you can continue to be the salesperson, and that's absolutely
mm.
fine. But if you want to grow a team, you need to have something that your team can follow,
Yeah,
and so that
absolutely.
a repeatable, like I said, a repeatable process, and
Yeah.
everyone gets a very similar sort of experience when they come in contact with your business.
Yeah, look, absolutely. So couldn't agree more. And so in my business, I'm the only person who's having the sales conversation. So I've got a number of people who work for me, and so they're overseas, but I'm the one who's having the conversations. But certainly, as my business grows, yes, I need to be able to pass on my skills and knowledge to others. I want to go back to your comment you made earlier. Regarding a second meeting or a strategy call, and I disagree with you. And I
Mm,
disagree with you because for me, so my business is about a service, it's advice, it's helping people. And so for me, I want to do a lot of stuff before we even meet. So we do a lot of stuff on social media. I'm giving away
mm,
advice and tips and tricks and strategies on social media. And so when I meet people in this capacity, it's to me there's two objectives. So one is, do they want to work with me, and two
yeah.
is, do I want to work with them? And I'm doing that in about 20 minutes. Sometimes it might drag over to 25, but that's about it. Because then what happens is, see, once I give advice, if I'm giving all my advice away to people and go on to another strategy call and do an hour in that, I'm giving all this advice away for free. And respectfully, that's how I make money. I make
Yeah.
money by the coaching, the advice, the strategy that I do. So I'm very big on, how do I make sure that in that 20, 25 minutes that
Mm,
people have got all the information that they need, they've got access to all of the free side of things through social media. We've got stuff on websites, blogs, articles, all that stuff there, lead magnets, in that 20, 25 minutes. That's it. That doesn't mean that I won't have a follow-up call with people, but I certainly won't go on to a full-blown strategy session. I absolutely will once they become a client of mine. That's the first thing we do. The very first
mm.
thing that we do is go through, but all of that good stuff is on the other side of a paywall.
Yeah, and this is the part of this the second lot of questions I want to ask around having sort of that, you know, your thoughts around either discovery and a strategy, because we see that a lot, and that was something, I guess, to a certain extent I was trained in as well. And I
Mm,
know when we've had conversations, you really challenged me on this, and then
mm,
we've actually condensed
mm,
condensed our calls.
mm,
Um, I am still seeing a lot of people having that 15-20 minutes and then diving into a strategy call, which might be an hour or plus.
mm,
Um, and but you note something very important as well. If you don't have any of that marketing, if someone doesn't have any of that marketing and that pre-work,
mm,
and you've got a prospect that's coming through your sales funnel who is new, who is trying to find out who you are and build that
mm.
trust and credibility, it may well be that you might need those 2 because they don't know enough about
Yeah, I
you.
understand. Mm,
They may not be able to make a decision quickly in that 20 minutes
mm.
about you because they don't know about you.
Yeah,
It's for example, I mean, I'll give an example. It's like having a call with Tony Robbins. Everyone knows Tony Robbins. Well, everyone
mm,
knows Tony Meredith. Like by the
mm,
time they get to you, right,
mm,
they they have some sort of concept of what it is that you do, and
mm,
it is just a matter of confirming that you're the right fit. Whereas if someone comes to you cold, not even from a referral, they've just seen an ad or some sort, and they've just come
mm,
through and haven't gone through that process
mm.
of marketing and what you do, if you don't have that in place, it is likely that potentially you might have to have. a two-step process. But
Sure, you may have to, but I would strongly encourage those people to build up
absolutely.
your organic marketing. So really get your skates on in that regard. And one of the things that I learned very early on, I've been doing this now for over 5 years, and one of the things I learned very early on is the power of organic social media. And I recognise
Mm,
that the organic reach has been compressed over the years as they want you to pay to do ads, etc. And that's all fine. But we have got extensive organic social media. So then there is so much out there for people to find out about me. And we've done that very, very deliberately. And literally yesterday afternoon, when I had this conversation with the gentleman I mentioned before from the videography company, he said exactly as you just have. I felt like I knew you before we even had this particular meeting. And then
mm,
exactly as you said, our meeting then confirmed exactly what his thoughts were about me. And so, yes, if early on, if you don't have that volume of organic social, you're probably going to need to do additional things like Cheryl suggested. However, get your skates on and get that social media happening. Lean into that. The number of people that are fearful of doing videos still blows my mind. The number
yeah.
of people that don't have a strong social media presence in 2023 and yet have been going at business for a while still blows my mind. And
Mm,
so it's about figure that out. I know we're here to talk about sales primarily, but this will help your sales. By having all of that, it's almost like pre-work, that a prelude to meeting you. This will help your whole and complement your whole sales process.
yeah, absolutely. And so we've had a lot of different conversations. We've got lots of different sort of material, learning material in the Facebook group.
Mm.
Again, at the moment, it's still open to the public, still open to everyone. Go through all the guides because we've stressed a lot on marketing because that is really the lifeblood. And marketing doesn't necessarily mean it's always paid marketing. There's organic marketing. Referrals are also another form of a marketing channel. So it's around how do you make sure that your marketing channel is full, but that they need to come into your sales funnel. And sales is again what Tony said is what we're talking about, just to make sure that we can
Well,
convert
one of the
people.
things when you start off in your business, Cheryl, one of the things that you won't have is you probably won't have money. One of the things that you will have is time. And so then it's not always about coming up with monies because you don't have any. So it's about then going, right, well, with my time, what can I be doing with my time that I've got to generate awareness? The key word here is awareness. If people don't know about your business, then you're trying to sell a secret. And
Mm,
that doesn't work, I can assure you, unless you're in the business of selling secrets,
yeah,
right? But then it's a case of you need to create awareness for your business. So leverage your time. And there is a gazillion things that you can be doing to leverage your time in when you don't have access to monies. Then once you start to get some momentum, then yes, you'll get some money. Don't take all of your money and put it in your pocket and go off and get yourself a fancy car. Reinvest that back into your business from a marketing point of view, and that will now start to speed up the process. But leverage your time. I work with a lot of businesses that are very seasonal, and so at this time of year they're very summer oriented, and so this time of year they're quiet. And so rather than sitting around and complaining about the fact that, hey, I don't have any leads coming in for my business, what can I be doing to ensure that I'm out there generating interest in my business? I recently did a speech to a large audience of window covering retailers. The phone has slowed for them. We're going through a period in the economy where interest rates are going up, inflation, all these things are well publicized. The phone has started to stop. Okay, so what can I do about it? My favorite
mm,
five-word phrase is, what else can I do? And so it's
yes,
about there are things that I can be doing from an awareness point of view, and organic social media is just one of them. There are so many things that we can do, and that's now the top of funnel. Then once they get into the top of the funnel, then we have to lean into the actual conversation where you've got to go and have that sales conversation.
yeah, absolutely. Sean's just sharing. These are reasons why I'm doing daily live videos in my growing groups and getting more warmed up. leads turning into clients, which is fabulous. It's exactly what we want to
That's
talk about.
outstanding, and then the other thing that I'll say, and thank you, Sean, for your for that sharing that. The other thing is it's the consistency. So if you look at what Sean's saying, he's doing it every day. So don't just go and do something for a week, for a fortnight, and then throw your hands in the air and say this doesn't work. If you were to look at for example, our Instagram, we've posted every day on Instagram for the last almost 6 years. And so it's about keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Some things will work, some things won't work, but keep going. Have that consistent and that persistent effort. I call it CAPE, CAPE, consistent and persistent effort. And I can assure you the most successful businesses are those that are consistent with what it is that they do.
Yeah, great. So Tony, let's talk about the mechanics of sales. And when I talk about the mechanics of sales, it's more sort of sales tracking, sales results, that sort of thing, because we want to, at the end of the day, get results. And we want to be able to see the areas that we need to improve on. We want to be able to see, conversions. Talk to me about some of the metrics that we can use.
Great. Yeah. So I had this conversation with a client yesterday. So they're an emerging franchise group out of Adelaide. They're doing really great things, and we talked about sales conversions. So their franchisees are getting X number of leads. And the conversions were incredibly low. In fact, in one of the divisions, the conversions were sitting around 25%. And so then, so the great news is that we're tracking it. And so the great news is I call that my line in the sand moment. So I want to constantly move beyond my line in the sand. But what are the things that I can do? So in that instance there, that group, they have a requirement that you will contact your lead within 2 hours. Now, I've actually gone online, done a little bit of research, and there was a study done in America that says that if you contact your inquiry within 5 minutes of that inquiry coming in, this is in a service-based business, within 5 minutes of that inquiry coming in, you are 21 times more likely to convert on that lead than if you wait 30 minutes. And so the point is there, be quick with this thing. Don't sit there and go, oh my gosh, I've got an inquiry or a lead or whatever. I'll get to that later. I'm over here doing something else. No, follow up with that lead. Why would the conversions be far greater? Because people are calling you because they've got a problem. They've got a situation going on, and depends upon what you're selling. Some of those problems may be more serious than others. And so it's a case of get onto that lead and see what's going on for them and how can you help. Because the other thing too, in 2023, we have choices. So if I'm going to put a lead in with you and you don't come back to me for 2 hours, for 4 hours, for a day, versus someone who comes back to me, relatively quickly, then I'm going to go elsewhere. Because I've got this problem that I need solved and I'm looking for someone to solve it for me. And quite often, the first person or the first company will win the business, regardless of what their quality is like, regardless of all those other factors. The fact is that they have been the most responsive and they will win the business. And so, in my business, how do I do that? Because, I'm coaching, so I spend most of my day doing coaching. So what I have is I've trained my, my assistant to make sure that whenever she sees an inquiry come through, bam, we're onto that straight away. And she's got a little script that she would then send to that particular client. So even though they mightn't be talking to me straight away, someone from my business has reached out immediately and said, hey, thank you so much, and let me walk you through the process from here. So it's important. Speed is going to contribute to your success in sales.
Yeah. And again, you raise a really good point just right there. Like you've got to identify as a business owner. Yes, if you're the face of the business and you're taking the sales calls, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be that person that's doing every single step of that sales funnel. Exactly like what Tony said, he gets his assistant, it's an email, and you can even, appointment if you have lots of leads and they're coming through downloading lead magnets or whatever that might be, you might get an appointment setter. So there are different things that you can do as a business to be able to leverage and get ahead and not feel, again, the whole mindset thing, not feel that you're the only one that needs to do it all.
Oh, of course. Look, and Cheryl, again, I've been doing this for over 5 years. Back when I first started, I was doing everything, but then the reason I was doing everything is because I had time. I didn't have the same number of customers back then that I do today, and so life was very different for me. So because I had time, I could wear 97 hats, but then I realized very quickly that wearing 97 hats was holding me back. And so it's about recognizing what are the things that I can outsource. So within our sales process, there are parts that I will absolutely outsource to my team, but there are parts that I still do today. And the part that I'm doing today is still the verbal conversation, but all the pre-work, all of our social media, all those other things that lead into our sales process, that is done by members within my team.
Yeah, and so that you can focus on the high value actions and be able to, exactly, because your whole business is around training other people as well, and in particular around the sales component. It's
Mm.
good for people to also see you in action. I think that's an
Oh,
important.
absolutely. And look, for my clients, I lift up the hood. I'm more than happy to share with them all the things that we do so that people can understand how do we do it? How does our machine work? How do we constantly bring, leads through? How do we close on those? What's the process that we do? What's our social marketing process? I'm more than happy to share that because it is a system and a process. And, I don't want to leave things to chance. And so, again, we go back to what we said probably 15, 20 minutes ago, and that is a lot of people will just rock up to a sales call and they'll wing it. G'day, how can I help you? Right. And so it's, oh my gosh, and so it's a case of, making sure that everything is a system and a process. So going back to what you're saying earlier, we're talking about the tracking of sales. So track, what gets measured gets done. So track your sales, and it doesn't have to be this super duper, CRM. It might just be a spreadsheet. It might be a piece of paper. It might be a whiteboard in your office, and you have a tally mark. Like, just track it in some capacity, because what gets measured gets done. And so you start to set yourself little goals, targets, etc. You challenge yourself. If your conversions are currently 25%, like the client that I just mentioned, what do we need to do to get to 50%? What are the things that we can be doing? And I touched on just one element. And that one element is the speed in which I respond to that lead. The other elements are then the quality. So there's quantity and there's quality. So quantity is how quickly I'm responding. The quality is, now that I'm responding, what is it that I'm actually saying? Am I just rocking up and going, g'day, mate, how can I help you? Or am I actually having a conversation, an exploratory conversation, a discovery session? I know that discovery session is used quite widely, but for me, it is a genuine discovery session. And like I said, way back at the start, in a 20-minute conversation, I want to be talking for about a quarter of that time, and that's at the end. I want to spend the first 3/4 of that time discovering what's going on for that individual.
Yeah, awesome. And so tracking, what are some ways to do the tracking and the measurements?
So
Simple,
you can,
easy ways to do it.
yeah, really, really simple. So you can track the number of leads that you get. You can track where those leads are coming from. So you talked before about you might get something through social media, you might get some referrals, you might get some stuff through lead magnets. So start to understand, where are your leads coming from. And that's going to help you from a marketing point of view. Then what you're going to do is track the number of actual conversations that you're having, because unfortunately not every lead that you get then converts into a conversation. So if you find that you're getting a low rate of actually people who are inquiring but they're not turning up, then you want to start to, what can I do in that space? So how do I start to engage people more so they get excited about coming along to the discovery session? Track the discovery sessions. Track what's my conversion. So if I'm having 10 discovery calls and I'm converting on 3, then my conversions are 30%. And so now, and there might be that step above, which is, well, 15 people have inquired, 10 people have turned up, and 3 have converted. So now it's like, okay, well, what are the things that I can be doing at each of those juncture points
Absolutely.
to ensure that I'm having far better outcomes?
Yeah, and it's about breaking it down, like you
Mm,
said, because it's not necessarily one single. It's not just the whole sales process is broken. Within the sales process, there are little steps, right? So the little steps, and even like you said, why are people not turning up?
mm,
You know, they just sort of go, well, then is there something that you can do to ensure and increase the percentage of turn ups? And
Absolutely, and there,
what
absolutely there is. And once you have that data, then because it's all about making data-based decisions. So a lot of people will make emotional-based decisions, right? You don't want to do that. You want to make data-based decisions. So that is based on the metrics. Where is the problem that I need to iron out? And if it's in that case and people aren't turning up, then you might send people a message the day before. So
mm,
you get target one of my team to send a message, just confirming you're catching up tomorrow. Look forward to seeing you. And so we're confirming that people are still coming along. We're sending them information before they arrive. So again, they're starting to warm them up to get ready for the conversation with me. There's plenty of little things that you can be doing if that's where your challenge is. If your challenge is, well, hey, I'm having a great number of discovery calls and I think I'm having a great discovery call, but I'm not converting. So now you need to reflect on, well, what's going on for me? And so what's
mm,
happening in the conversation? Am I doing all the talking? Am I ignoring the person that I'm speaking to? Am I not finding out about their objectives and simply just going, here's what I'm going to sell you? And
yeah.
so, then it's a case of, well, I need to reframe that. And again, that comes down to, what's my process? And then when
Mm,
I get an objection, for example, how am I handling that objection? Am I closing? So it's fascinating. I recently did a presentation to a large electrical company, and we're just not closing. We're not game to have that
mm,
conversation.
mm,
And salespeople quite often will go through this beautiful presentation. They'll be listening and they'll be a curious mindset. And then it'll get to we're now going to close on this conversation. And it's like, but I'm not going to close because I'm worried they're going to say no. And so I'm just going to leave it open ended and listen, you come back to me when you're ready. Well, I can tell you it's not going to happen.
mm.
Right. So you've
Yes.
got to be able to, what can I do to close on that conversation?
Um, that final bit around, let me know what you think. I'll give you a call in 2 days. What
Oh
are
my God.
really effective? What are
Oh
Tony's
my
giving you a nosebleed. What are really effective ways of closing?
You can ask the question. Based on what I've talked about today, you're happy to proceed.
Hmm.
Simple, simple. We just want to close them down. Depends on what your business is. So you could do what's called an option close. It could be a case of, hey, I've got an opening next Wednesday or Friday. Which one of those suits you?
Yeah.
An assumptive close is, can I put you down for 6 units of that? Right.
Mm,
So there's a number of close. They're now or never closed. So perhaps at this time of year, given it's the end of financial year, so this is about creating a little bit of urgency into that sale process. Hey, look, that special offer is only available until the 30th of June.
mm,
Are you happy to take advantage of that? So there's a number of little closes that you can incorporate. Look, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of closes. I would suggest to people, just come up with your 2, maybe 3 that you're comfortable with, that
yeah.
really suit you. This is not about you being robotic. This is about you being a natural salesperson. But just come up with something that's very natural for you. But again, the really most basic one of all is, are you happy to proceed? Based on what I've talked to you about today, are you happy to proceed? That's
Mm,
it.
mm.
Get used
And
to
if you've
saying
done,
that.
yeah, and if you follow the process, and you've addressed all the potential objections as well and their concerns, and they've got to the point where you know that you tick the box in terms of what they need and
Mm,
that they're the right fit. You've
mm.
answered all their objections. Then really the natural progression is, are you are you ready to progress?
Yeah,
And you
and if they aren't, then there's a reason why they're not,
Mhm.
and so that could be, there's always the, hey, the no money. So it's either, hey, I don't have the budget, or B, I don't see the value. There's a time, now's not the right time. There's a, I need to speak to my partner or my boss or someone
Yeah.
else. So there's a handful of objections that are the regular objections that come up. But the big one typically is around price. And so
Yeah.
let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So, from a price point of view, theoretically, a transaction happens when value exceeds price. And so, if you think about your own purchase decisions, right? If this is value and this is price, then if you feel that something is way better value than the price tag and you're in the market for that thing, it's like, yeah, you know what, let's get this. Whereas if you see that something, the price is way above where the value is, like, oh my gosh, I can't see the value in buying that thing, whatever that thing might be. And so when you have price that's greater than value, there's only one of two things that you can do. You either A, reduce the price. Now, I'm not suggesting this is in the order of preference, but it's an option, right? You can reduce the price, and most people will do that, right? Unfortunately, and I cringe when I hear that. It's like, well, we'll knock $50 off. How does that sound? No. The other is then, what about if I stack the value, right? I want to stack value, real value, perceived value, whatever it might be. But I want to make sure that you now think that there's more value than the price ticket, right?
Just
So
on
one of the
that
things,
point,
go.
sorry, just on that point, stacking value.
Yeah.
Does that mean we've got to be doing more?
Not necessarily. It's about how I communicate it. So, for example, stacking value is around understanding what are my features and benefits. So, what are the features of the thing that I'm selling, but what are the benefits of the thing that I'm selling? And so, a benefit is the so what. So, for example, I do work with, I'll talk about the electrical company, right? So, they might sell a solar unit that is a good, better, and best version. And so, the good, better, and best is based on price, but then it's also based on features. And so now if I want to go and sell the best version of that solar
Yes.
unit, then I want to make sure that I'm clearly articulating what are the features of that unit, but not only the features, what are the benefits of buying that unit? So, for example, it may have a 5-year, no questions asked warranty. What does that mean to you? So that's the feature. The benefit then is, hey, Mrs. Smith, that is absolute peace of mind for you that if anything goes wrong, you call us, we'll be straight out here, no cost to you, looking after you. So there's absolute peace of mind. It might be a case that that high unit may provide you more savings. Again, if it's a solar unit, it might be more, I don't know, more power back to the grid or whatever it might be. The benefit to you, Mrs. Smith, is that that's going to help you either pay less on electricity, pay none on electricity, perhaps make some money from the solar that it's attracting. So it's about figuring out whatever you're selling, what are the features of what I'm selling, but then what are the benefits? And when you look at the benefits, very simple 2 words that you want to ask, so what? So you ask yourself, there's a feature, and then ask yourself, so what? And when you answer the so what, that's then when we start to articulate the benefit to you, the prospect.
Let's give a quick example. So say I'm a buyer's agent
Mm.
and my price is, 2.2% or whichever, and
Sure.
you've got a prospect that says, oh, no, but this other person is, they're a fixed price at this much, whichever.
Mm.
Because if it's at 2.2%, and say, for example, I'm purchasing $1 million house, they make the calculations, they sort of go, oh, that's more expensive. What are some ways all right, if we talk features and they say, okay, well, one part of what it is that we do is we provide comparative market analysis, we do a walkthrough videos, we will do this, and this.
Mm.
And that's where you go, these are the features. But if you stop at that, then someone's going to go, uh-huh, and then so what?
Yeah, and
That
so what does that mean to me? What's the benefit? So what? And you're exactly right. And so then it's about going, well, if someone's at 2.2 and some percent and someone's at a fixed price, are we comparing apples and apples or apples and oranges? And so the other thing is you want to understand your marketplace. And so then you could say, look, I recognize that there are buyers out there that are a little cheaper than us, but here's the wonderful things that we do here in Leong Buyers Agency. We do this. This means this. We do this. This means that. We do this. This means that. And as a result, and not only that, our clients can attest that we are constantly finding properties well and truly under market value. And as a result of that, then whilst, yes, you may feel it's a slightly larger investment, use the word investment, not expense, slightly larger investment, then the return on that investment, Mrs. Smith, is going to be considerable. So it's about how you frame that up and really amplify the things that you are adding. Now, if you have exactly the same as the person who's cheaper than you, then you want to have a pretty compelling argument, right? But whereas when you start to put more on top, and again, it doesn't have to be actual value, it could be perceived value, right?
Yes.
But what are the things that I can do to now amplify and give you a reason as to why my investment or the investment with my services is slightly larger? And so in my business, there are so many coaches out there, right? There are coaches, just as many coaches as there are probably buyers agents, probably more coaches, to be honest. And so how do I then cut through the noise, and I'm not the cheapest, but I'm not the most expensive either. But, how do I cut through all of the noise? And it's about amplifying all the wonderful things that I've got. Plus, I work very hard on getting, case studies and proven testimonials from my clients. And we talk about, my experience. The fact is that, a lot of other coaches may have just done this, whereas for me, I've got experience here, 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 and here. What this means is that you're going to get blah, blah,
Mm.
blah. And so it's about amplifying all the things that you have. And then you want to make sure that you're just communicating the value. So now all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, look, I had a client say to me recently, Tony, you're too cheap. I did suggest to him that I would send him an invoice, which we laughed about. But anyway, the point is that the value that he has got from working
Mhm.
with me is astronomical compared
Yes.
to the investment that he's made.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's wrap it up. What are some parting words, Tony, around sales? If someone, whoever's listening, if you're struggling with sales,
Hmm.
or and that could be, I mean, if you're not getting enough leads, that's a marketing
That's a
issue.
marketing issue, right? But this is
Yeah.
sales. So, firstly, so my parting word are these. Remember, firstly, that sales cures all. And so, I was very fortunate many years ago. I went to a presentation from Tony Nash, who's the founder and director of Booktopia. So,
Yeah.
Booktopia being the Australian version of, well, it used to be the Australian version of Amazon. Obviously, Amazon's a whole lot bigger than that today. And he was saying that early on in his business, he was struggling for sales and he was focusing
Mhm.
inwardly and how am I going to pay my staff and how am I going to pay my creditors and my suppliers, et cetera, et cetera. And he said the light bulb came on the moment that he said, if I just generate more sales, I don't have to stress about how I'm going to pay my staff and how I'm going to pay to have the lights on, et cetera, et cetera. And so his whole mindset was focusing on what he wanted, focus on sales, right? So sales cures all. I'm a massive believer in that
Yes.
when you generate more sales in your business, it takes care of all these other things. I literally had a conversation yesterday with a client. Her goal in her business was to get $400,000. Right, that was her goal, an annual income for revenue of $400,000. Right, she's come to me and said we're at the end of the financial year. She's going to get 600,000, and I said, "Wow!" I said, "What have you been doing to it?" She said, "I've been focusing on sales. That's all I've been focusing on because I'm trusting that this process will work, and as I generate more revenue, I can pay my staff, I can pay my suppliers, I can pay for my office lease, my electricity, blah, blah, blah." So sales cures all. That was my first thing. The
Mm.
other is to like we talked about before with the mindset, change your meaning around sales. Sales is about helping people. Sales is about adding value, enriching someone's life, and making one hell of a difference. If you are selling something, you have an absolute privilege where you have a solution that can help someone. That's pretty cool. Like when you stop and think about how powerful that is. So, look, there's some high level things. I mean, gosh, I could go on for weeks and weeks and weeks on sales. If you are fearful of sales, I would
Mm.
suggest lean into it. Just do one sales call. If you're fearful of making a sales call, lean into it. Create a little bit of a script for yourself, so that when you, you talked about buyer's agents before, many, many years ago, when I first got involved in the property side of things and I was calling agents and I had a background in sales and I was calling agents, I was petrified to call an agent. And so what I did is I created myself a list of questions, which I still give all of my property students today. But I had a list of questions. And I literally sat there on the phone and I just asked the questions that I had in front of me. And I just
Yeah.
filled in the blanks, right? So create for yourself a little script. There's no shame or harm in having a script because it's a guidepost to your conversation. And in fact, it'll ensure that you have a far better outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic, Tony. So much gold in that. And I think that's Sean. It's gold, Tony. Value needs to be higher than price for people to buy. I love that one.
Hmm.
And again, it's not around reducing your price.
No,
Obviously, you
no.
need to know where your competition is and where you are, but it is the value, and value can be communicated. We can set that And that can be in our messaging and what we do in terms of marketing as well. So sales and marketing go hand in hand, absolutely. But once you get the leads in the door, we need to make sure that we're converting them as well. Because like you said, it is the lifeblood.
And also, just on that comment there, and thanks again. I think Sean wrote that in. Thanks, Sean, for that. When you're communicating price, leave your price till the end. So when you talk about price, if you go up front and say your goods or your service is $5,000, and you say straight up front, to work with me, it's going to cost you $5,000. Well, now the person who's listening to you is the whole time thinking, $5,000, that's expensive. $5,000, I spoke to a coach the other day and they said that $2,000, right? They're not listening to what you're saying. So they're starting to justify in their own mind about the $5,000. Leave it to the end. So, hey, I want to talk to you about all the wonderful things that you get for working with me. Value, 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 value. And the investment for working with me is this, and be very deliberate with the words that you're using. And so now all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh. So by the time you've outlined all this value, and you get to the investment, and it's like, oh my gosh, that feels really, really cheap
Yes.
because of
Yes.
the positioning that I've used, the where I've raised the pricing, the actual cost bit. So I would say leave that to the end, but spend the time in amplifying your value.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you so much, Tony. It's
Okay.
been awesome having you as always.
Thank
So
you.
much gold. If you are someone who needs some help with your sales process in terms of identifying why your sales isn't going as well as it should. And again, marketing and sales are although they go hand in hand, they're a little bit different. Have a chat with Tony. I know he's got a full calendar, so but do still have one of those conversations with Tony. See him in action as well. If if you're at the point where you said, "Take my money," he's done what he needs to do, and he's done
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely.
He's done it well. So it's been
Very good.
absolutely
Thank you,
fantastic.
Cheryl. Been an absolute thrill. I'm glad that I could add some value to your audience, and we'll catch up with you soon.
We will. Take care. Ciao, ciao. And thanks, everyone.
Bye.
And we'll see you in the next Business of Property, but in the inner circle. Bye bye.